Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Austin Price, Jesse Simonton, Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. Let's jump right into Tennessee football. The Vols getting ready for their second major scrimmage of the preseason. That's going to take place tomorrow.
You excited about it?
Well, I'd like to see it, but that's not going to happen. Jeremy Pruitt is
You'll
going
see
to
it in 2 weeks versus Georgia State.
Yeah, Jeremy Pruitt's going to talk about it after practice tomorrow, so we'll see what he has to say about it.
Not a whole lot, I'm anticipating.
Well, probably got to see the film quite a bit before he gets there, that's for sure. But if you're Jeremy Pruitt, based on what we've heard from Tracy Rocker this week and Chris Winkie this week and David Johnson, what do you think you should expect from this football team in scrimmage 2?
You hope steady improvement. I think the offense has been really good in fall camp. Obviously, the defense had the first this more success in the first scrimmage. It wasn't like the offense was bad. The defense was pleasantly good. I think you want to continue to see the defense take another step. Do you not? Because that's the worry is that the front. The front seven, specifically the defensive line, is going to be kind of the detriment to the team. You'd like to see some of those guys continue to make some plays in scrimmage too. At least I would.
Well, I think this is not independent of Tennessee, but I think all these teams that are hosting their second scrimmage this weekend, coming out of it, you hope it's whether you have a depth chart or whatever, it's above the line or below the line.
Yeah, defined.
Yeah, are you above the line or below the line in terms of can we count on you? And so maybe a guy like Bumpus isn't ready to play every down at defensive end. But Tracy Rocker says, hey, this guy can help us on third down as a pass rusher.
So he's above
the line. But where's a guy like Kingston Harris, who we really haven't heard anything about, in the last 10 days or so. So I think it's going to be important. And then we're talking, I use the defensive line as an example, but that's the same way for the offensive line, for the freshman defensive backs. Can a guy like McCullough early in the season, is he above the line or below the line? And so I think coming out of Saturday, the hope is that you figure out and you have a pretty good idea of who those guys are, and then you start to really kind of determine your quote-unquote depth chart and starting 11, starting 5, on the offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's probably the mindset of everybody around the country when you're talking about the second scrimmage, as you mentioned. The buzzword this week has been, and really the last week and a half, 10 days, has been consistency. I think that's normal around the country. I think if you look at a lot of guys, a lot of coaches' quotes, everybody's talking about consistency and the need for more consistency. That a big deal, or is that just normal?
I think it's just normal. Just kind of like as you pointed out the other day, Brent, what coach is ever happy?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it don't matter how well you do, like they always want more and more and more. Just like when you get let's say you land 15 4-stars in the class and a couple of 5-stars, the coaches want more and more and more the next year. You're constantly trying to be better than what you were. So I think that's normal to want your team to be more consistent because you're never going to be as consistent as you'd like.
And it's normal for freshmen to be inconsistent.
Yeah, and I was going to say this is also Pruitt has harped on it a bunch, but at certain spots this is a pretty young green team, specifically on some defensive spots. So those are the guys that they're really trying to tap into to kind of bring Greg Emerson. Rocker saying he's got to bring it every day. He flashes. He's been our best run stopper at times. But where's that day-to-day effort, day-to-day kind of consistency or execution, what have you? Your guy in your 3-2-1 was Roman Harrison, who was going to create buzz, and he seemed dinged up, so he didn't. That was a freshman that didn't create the buzz. But it certainly seems like Eric Gray. This is another opportunity for him on Saturday in this second scrimmage to kind of continue to cement the fact that he's going to be a real factor on this football team, because I don't think the hype train has slowed down on him. Jeremy tried to throw a little bit of cold water on it. What was that, Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday, I guess, ball security, this kind of that. David Johnson was extremely, effusive in his praise about the freshman running back.
Well, and you continue to hear maturity, just as behind the scenes, just to talk about his maturity, the way he goes about his business, and seeing him up close, he's a well put together deal. I know Jason Swain had mentioned on Twitter that the Alvin Kamara comparison.
Yeah, that's unfair to the kid.
It's probably a little much. he's got some of that style about him, I think. But to say that he's that, I don't know that that's fair. But he does have that kind of style of game. He catches it out of the backfield. He's got the burst. He runs with a little more power than people would expect, the way Alvin does as
I think
well.
it's natural too to make comparisons, anyways. And
Well, I think it's what everybody on the board. Everybody on the board was asking us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's natural to kind of look at him and hope, and you're more than anything, you're hoping that you can get another Charlie Garner or another Alvin Kamara or whatever.
Right, and size wise, and some of his skill set, he has some of those things, but who knows if that's, of course, when he left here, not a lot of people thought Alvin Kamara was all that in a bag of chips, and then he got with Sean Payton, and now he's all that in a ball. You knew he was good.
They knew he was slippery and had that skill set.
But you didn't know that way because he was not used in that vein at Tennessee on a regular basis.
I just thought one of the anecdotes that David Johnson told that was interesting. Eric was here in the spring but couldn't participate because of the shoulder injury. But just you talk about the maturity, the work ethic. That was a word that David Johnson used a lot, work ethic. But specifically that he so badly wants to learn, and so even though he could not do anything in the spring, he stayed until after 8 p.m. all these nights for these individual meetings so he could learn the pass protection and the checks and that kind of stuff. And we know, I mean, for freshmen, running back is one of the easier spots to play to get on the field, but to play down to down, you got to know those sorts of things on third down, be able to catch the ball and what have you, and obviously. Eric brings that skill set, and so I put it in my 10 things. I think if I'm picking today, it'd be the same 4 guys. I think the foremost by the end of the year, the guys that are going to be the 4 biggest playmakers for Tennessee is going to be Eric Gray, Ty Chandler, DWA, and Callaway. Based on what I've seen in fall camp and what we've kind of heard behind the scenes, that would be my 4 pick today. Those 4 guys are the guys that Tennessee's going to count on and will end up as their best 4 playmakers.
I don't disagree with that.
I don't disagree. I will couch it with Josh Palmer being the guy that you could insert and maybe taking one of those guys out. Maybe Gray is the 5th and Palmer's the 4th.
Yeah, it's that Palmer. I mean, lots of people had that feedback. Where's Palmer? Where's Juwan Jennings?
But I think the key in all that
Jeremy
is
Banks. But I mean, to me, what we've seen, those are my 4 picks right now.
And I think for Tennessee though to win, to win those games and then show recruits that they turn the corner, I think you've got a brother-in-law a little bit. Do you not think so? Maybe Ty Chandler doesn't have a big day one week, but Tim Jordan emerges for 1 week.
Well,
you know what I mean.
I don't think
brother-in-law.
I don't think they have a complete, just a guy who's the guy in the offensive backfield. I think they have a collection of guys who have good skills.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way they're going to be. I don't think it's an intentional brother-in-law thing. I just think that some games there's going to be different matchups, and they're going to do things. Certain packages, certain ways this guy's skill set fits, so you play him more as opposed to there's a bell cow guy who you give it to 25 or 30
I
times.
think everybody really, the way the college football is going now, and specifically the way recruiting's going, I think everybody kind of Georgia with DeAndre Swift and Alabama with Najee Harris, those are 2 dudes. But they're not going to get it 25 times most every week. They may get it when they play each other, when it's Georgia versus Alabama, but they're not going to get it, on a random Saturday. It's going to be an egalitarian type deal where the carries and touches are split around, and Tennessee's no different in that respect. To me, I just think the best 2 are going to be Chandler and Gray, but I'm certainly one that I think Jordan right now is ahead of where Jeremy Banks. A lot of people have expectations and hope for Jeremy Banks. Right now, I think Tim Jordan is ahead of Jeremy Banks on the depth chart.
But I think Ty Chandler and Eric Gray are ahead because of the way the game's changing too. Okay, it's a space game, and it's about getting the ball to the guy in space. So if the running back can catch the ball out of the backfield, look, Jim Chaney's found running backs open against Alabama for years. Probably hadn't used them enough, to be honest with you. I saw this debate on a national show about the value of running backs, and it was like, where would you put a guy like Melvin Gordon? Okay, Melvin Gordon's stone hands. He's not going. He's a non-factor out of the backfield. He's a turn and hand it to guy. He's not got the value that Alvin or some of these other guys have because they don't have that playmaking stuff outside. If you've got those, that's what the game's turning into.
Right.
Is the ability to get it in space to particularly to running backs, and I think that's where you see. That's why you're going to see Gray and Chandler be such a big factor, because it's not about just hitting it up between the tackles. Okay, there'll be times you got to do that. I think that's going to be Tim Jordan and maybe even bank some. But to call stress on linebackers and defenses, it's the ability to get those guys out in space.
Yeah, and Jordan doesn't really have the wiggle, but he can't. He is. I mean, and David kind of alluded to this on Thursday. Tim can catch the football. What's going to determine his playing time, and last year was where he really struggled, was in pass protection. I mean, he got JG almost decapitated twice in 2 different games, and that can't
happen this
and
year
that
with
can't
no
happen.
Killer Chris
Yeah,
to
and
back him up.
that can't happen with anyone. Not that Tim Jordan is an example, but that's just it doesn't matter who's going to be back there, because it sure did sound like, from Chris Winke's perspective, they have a clue what they want to do with those other 2 guys.
Well, I think from that standpoint, if you transition into that, you're going to play both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what we've said.
This is what I wrote. Is what you said. Yeah, exactly.
And you don't, when you're playing both, you're trying to figure out who one is, and the only way you can figure it out is kind of throw both out
Do
there.
the old Spurrier, just rotate them a play.
Noah Brandeis, Jesse Palmer.
See what happens. And,
All right, we're going to throw you in here. We're
going
going to bring it back.
Bring in Doug Johnson.
We're going to bring him in, and we're going to put that one in, and kind of go from there. But I thought Winke was, I've enjoyed talking to the assistant coaches. They don't seem to throw as much water and put out fires and hype trains as much as the head coach does, which is kind of natural. I thought Winke was interesting in kind of his praise for Jared, because we heard Jared did not have his best day on Saturday, and he acknowledged that, but he just said overall, better leader, been a better player, how much better he's gotten, and how much more comfortable they are there with him. But you're right, behind him he was kind of like, he seemed a little more bullish on Maurer than he did JT Shrout, just in terms of upside.
Well, and the ability to run, and I think there's an it factor with Brian Maurer.
Well, you've always believed that.
Yeah, kind of like a guy that
swagger
just,
action.
Yeah, just kind of, is he going to throw the pretty ball? No. But is he going to make plays? I'm not saying he's Josh Dobbs, okay? So I'm not. But Josh had that kind of. I mean, nothing about Josh was like flashy, but the dude just made plays and got him down the field. Is that Maurer on a smaller scale as a freshman, if he had to play?
Yeah, who knows?
But he ain't playing
unless something bad happens.
Yeah.
Unless you play him
the 4-game rule.
And I would play him in the first couple of games as quick as I can get him on the field.
I would 100% play both JT and Brian versus State and Chattanooga. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would get him in there as quick as I can.
Absolutely.
And let him play, not just hand off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Right.
I mean, Shrout's whole deal is that he can't stop throwing it to the other team. I mean, you got to, because he clearly has real arm talent, but the transition to a new offense, going under center more, that's been an adjustment. Maurer hadn't taken a snap under center before he got to Tennessee either, so it's not like that's some smooth transition as well. So, I mean, those guys are going to need reps, because I think we all agree at some point this season, whether it's JG's helmet gets knocked off,
that's
but I mean it's going to be something like that. You got to know who it's going to be that you immediately go to, and whether he has to play 3 plays or 3 quarters.
Right. Now, if it's 3 quarters,
you
might be playing both.
You might be playing both.
You got to get to the half.
Yeah.
Who are you going to get? If you have something, midway through the second quarter,
he's got to go to the locker room for 10 plays. Yeah,
exactly. Get taped up, and you're trying to get to the halftime. Like, hey, let's hold this thing in the road till we get to half. Who's that guy going to be?
Right.
And you got to.
And that's why those 2 of the first 3 games, you at least have an opportunity to get closer to that decision.
You better take advantage of that opportunity to try to get towards that decision. Tracy Rocker, this is like nice version Tracy Rocker right now, right? Do we think this is going to continue to last? Obviously, he's trying to be very careful with the young men.
Doesn't seem to want to bury him.
Doesn't seem to yet, but
No.
But
I guess
I
it
think
depends.
it's coming.
Maybe if
Once we get into
BYU,
season, I think
if
it's coming.
BYU hits him in the mouth a little bit.
I think it may
that
be
veteran
coming a
offensive
little bit.
line. I could see that. Because Tracy, I mean, I asked him the question. I mean, by his own admission, he has changed his demeanor to a much nicer and calmer veteran coach. But he kind of said that you got to lean on him when you can lean on him, but you got to praise him when you can praise him. He's clearly, I think they like the upside of some of these guys in the group. It's just what can you get out of them on a given day. And right now there seems to be some question that on a Tuesday, Darrell Middleton may look like he's really good, but on Wednesday he may not show up. And that's not just for Darrell. That's for Greg Emerson. That's for Aubrey Solomon. That's for all these guys. And so they're trying to get up where they can get on those days, have more of those days where they're good than not.
What do you do with Aubrey Solomon?
Well, we've seen him at the back of the line almost this entire week. I mean, we're obviously recording this before Friday's practice. We'll be back out there. My anticipation is we'll see 2 periods and they'll be in shells, so we're not going to see a whole lot. But I'll be very curious about how much the feedback is post tomorrow's scrimmage. Does he play? Played a lot with the ones in week 1, but we're still in this limbo. Whether it's Michigan holding it up or whether the waiver was denied, whatever it is, there's been no clarity there. And you're getting awful close to the season where, again, you need to know who's above the line and below the line. And right now, he's just sitting on the line because you don't know if he can play.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, at some point, as you get closer to the, you move into inside 2 weeks, Austin, he falls below the line, not because he can't play, but just because,
you don't know.
From a talent standpoint, but just because you're not going to lay him out there. What do you do with it?
I think you take him below the line. You still give him reps. But here's the one thing I think is a perfect test. And I know BYU's an ample opponent, but if let's say he gets cleared right before the first game, I think he's going to have basically 3 non-conference games before you ever get to your first league game to kind of build into to work your way kind of in slowly into the season. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're like going straight in there and playing Oklahoma.
But I mean,
I think you sure hell like to have Aubrey Solomon versus BYU.
Well,
I agree.
And I think the other thing too is they haven't backed him off much to this point. Okay, he was at the back of the line, but it's not like they've shut him down to where he's going to fall. I mean, he should be good to go as soon as he gets cleared because he's played enough and he's practiced enough. I just think the question is, the obvious question everybody asks is it going to happen? I mean, they're going to have to make some kind of ruling at some point, but I mean, when are you going to get there?
Well, exactly. But I will say this, in a little bit of counter to AP. I mean, Aubrey, it's not like he's Trey Smith and was a freshman All-American. Now, he was a blue-chip recruit, and he clearly has a lot of talent, but he hadn't played a ton of football. He was dinged up a whole lot last year, played as a rotational guy as a freshman. I think it would be very beneficial for a guy like Aubrey Solomon to play as many snaps as he can against Georgia State, Chattanooga, whoever, before you're like, hey, we got to count on this guy versus Florida, South Carolina.
I mean, I think he needs some. I don't think you play him a stupid amount because he's the best interior guy you got. And
but I'm not going to rotate everybody. I'm just saying it's not like he's not somebody.
No, in my mind, I think guys like Greg Emerson need it just as bad too.
They do.
They're trying to figure their way.
But your point is well taken. Even though he's played and he's a 5-star, it's not like he was all Big Ten as a freshman.
I mean, Matthew Butler has played way more snaps than Aubrey Solomon.
Right.
Aubrey Solomon is not the elixir that everybody just thinks he is because he was a high-profile recruit. Yeah, I think because he was a former 5-star, everybody just thinks, oh, we're just going to plug him in and we've got John Henderson. Henderson. We've got John Henderson. You know what I mean? I agree with this notion. I mean, I totally agree with
and he could. And I'm not at all discounting the possibility of him growing into a potential All-American type guy. But that's not what Aubrey Solomon is right now. Right now, he is, again, just one of these very promising, tantalizing pieces, but you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of him.
Yeah, and right now you don't know when you're going to get any kind of word back on the piece of paper, which is the most frustrating part. I mean, Tracy Rocker was, look, don't ask me about it. It's out of my hands. You know what I'm saying? I've had enough, and Jeremy Pruitt's clearly tired of talking about it as well. So we'll see if they get an answer or when they get an answer or if they get an answer at this particular point with that one, because that's the only thing dangling out there about this team. There's plenty of things to work on, but that's the only thing dangling out there about this team in terms of personnel at this point. Because you know who you have, but you just don't know where he's at. Well, I mean, I think Trey. I'm sliding towards the Austin Price camp. He's just going to be there.
Which I've been there for months. Hubs, join me.
He may not.
Good to have.
He may not do anything.
Better go. What's Jimmy Hyams got to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, he may. I mean, he's not going to be there. I just think he's going to be there. You know what I mean?
He's playing. He's starting.
I just think, but I don't know that he's going to do anything before you get to that point. I mean, if you're not going to scrimmage him this week, you're probably not going to scrimmage him. You're just going to roll him out there and play, right?
Yeah, I think he probably gets to. I think they probably test this in a practice.
I think he may have done some more stuff than we know too in practice.
Agreed.
All right, so if he's your left guard, are you going Wanya at left tackle?
I think they're going to go Jameer Johnson at left tackle.
You think so? Over
early
Wanya?
on.
All
early
right.
on. I think both freshmen are going to watch the first series of the year.
And then you're going to go Brandon Kennedy at center.
Yes.
You going K'Ron Calvert at guard?
I'm going K'Ron.
I mean, I think it's between K'Ron and Jerome Carvin. The Riley Locklear experiment, I think, lasted about 4 days.
over 4 plays.
And Ryan Johnson's not going to be a factor in there
No.
from a veteran standpoint? Probably not. At guard?
Well, I think you're already going veteran with Jameer and Marcus Tatum. So at some point you got to roll out a little bit of talent, you know.
And so you're gonna go.
And not that Ryan doesn't have talent, but those guys have more natural.
So you're gonna
talent.
go. You're gonna go K-Ron.
And K-Ron's a guy that needs to play.
Yeah.
The only way he can get more consistent
Yeah.
is to play.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Watching
a guy that
him
they
will
want.
help
Yeah,
him.
they want
And
to
it's
challenge him.
Georgia
They want to
State.
challenge him.
Well, and
let
they
him
need-
go
and
just
they-
knock the piss out of some guys and
Right.
bang heads. I mean, he needs to play.
Well, and they've got to create a physical mentality, and he is by nature a physical player.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of Jim Chaney going when he's talking about finding his best five. The number one thing in his best five is not going to be pass set. You know, it's going to be what five want to come off the ball the hardest, because it was clear this week on the football field that's his whole focal point with his team is who's going to explode off the ball and hit somebody. He's clearly looking for more physicality
Which
in the
plays,
run game.
which plays into Jameer Johnson, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean,
and,
because he
and
does have that
K-Ron,
mentality.
you know, and so
And Trey, obviously.
right.
Well, and that's why. I mean, I could see the left tackle deal going up until right around the day before game time. You know, like that could be one if.
Oh, agree. I don't think they're announcing anything.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and I'm with you. I think they rotate. You know, that you're going to get those. You're
I
going to
think
get
the
those freshmen
three
in there early.
knowns are if Trey is good to go, Trey's playing left, Kennedy's playing center, and Tatum's playing right tackle.
Yeah, I think those
and
are the
then
three knowns. And then,
probably Calvert because of his upside.
Now, do they?
Right.
And I know
I
Jeremy
agree with
don't
that.
necessarily think this way, but all coaches in their infinite wisdom think this way to a degree. Does it behoove you to? Because I think you mentioned
Not play the freshmen together.
No, I was going to say, does it not behoove you to play one of them to start the year? It's Georgia State. I mean, like to start. I mean, whether
I think you got to be careful with that. I mean,
I'm with you because
from
I
the
think
standpoint
Jameer
of-
goes in the tank if he's not out there.
well,
in the
it's
first
not just
play.
that. I mean, if you're talking about this as a competition and it's an open competition, you play the five that won the job.
Yeah.
And you don't get into we've seen this. We've seen Tennessee go in a nickel formation to open a game to satisfy a recruiting deal. Okay, we've seen Tennessee give a freshman running back the first touchdown to satisfy a recruiting promise, you know, and that type of thing. I think right now with where you are establishing your culture and Jeremy Pruitt's nature, you play your best five. And if that's a freshman, that's a freshman. If it's not, because I think that's the whole basis of what he's trying to sell everybody.
It is noteworthy, I will say though, that one he has taken many more reps with the quote unquote ones than Jameer.
When we've been out there.
But even hearing about the scrimmage
Correct,
and
yeah.
I mean, like even just talking to folks,
And he may
thus
win the
far-
job.
And he may win the job. But I'm just
But I
saying
think
it's-
my point is, if he plays and starts, he did it because he won the job, not because it was a recruiting pitch or it's a recruiting sales job to say, hey, we're going to play a freshman here. Because look, they're going to be able to say we're playing freshmen. They've got Alante and Bryce from the year before, and Trayvon Flowers, and they're going to have Henry this year, and they're going to have Eric Gray this year as guys who factor in early. And Wanye's going to play whether or not he starts. The
And
first
Darnell's
snap or
going to
not.
play.
Yeah, he is.
You know.
All right, let's jump to. We'll talk more about the depth chart moving forward, coming out of the second scrimmage, kind of who's above the line, who's below the line on that deal. Let's jump to recruiting right quick. BJ, I'm gonna mess up his name. Ojulari. I just have a hard time.
Old Jalari.
He's announcing.
You can go do the video like Zach Stipe. Looked like it was a hostage video.
So he's announcing. BJ's announcing later today.
Spam the camera to show that Henry T is not in chains or something and flash it back.
So how's Tennessee got back in Austin? I'm trying to direct this thing down.
I thought
right back.
Stipe was the hostage.
Hey, come
They
here.
both are.
Listen, back on. Circle back around. Let's get to recruiting here. How's Tennessee got back in on this deal? To the point that Tennessee's the favorite for news this afternoon. It seems like.
Yeah, they're the favorite for news. You know, I worked LSU the last week and a half, and really turned the tide by saying, you know, showing him, look, you go there, you're just one of a number. You're here, you're the guy, and you know, Niedermeyer, Rumpf,
Caleb
Cox, Derek Tinsley, Jeremy Pruitt, Derek Ansley. You can roll right down the list of guys that are either here or at Marietta, you know, including, you know, Ramel and Harrison, that have been leaning hard on BJ for the last week and a half. Because I mean, again, a week and a half ago, this kid was going to LSU.
I think a lot of, you know,
had taking pictures and all that stuff and his LSU stuff, and Tennessee's flipped it around.
You know, Niedermeyer has gotten a lot of credit on the trail. Some other guys do, but this is kind of the first time in a while that, and you know, we'll see what happens, but the first time in a while that Jeremy has really put his foot down and, as the head coach, kind of gotten Tennessee back in. You know, when he got word of LSU being he was the one that spearheaded the Brian Rumpf, Caleb, like, we got to get on, like, we can't afford to just pass up a kid, you know, and miss so easily. And so they have gotten back into it. And if they do land BJ today, then that gives them another chip in the Eric Gilbert race. You know, they just continue to be in that Marietta pipeline.
When you really look at it, you know, you have Harrison, potentially later day BJ. As you said, that helps with Gilbert. Next week you got Mordecai McDaniel. If he falls to Tennessee, that helps you with Rakim Jarrett. And then you've got, I mean, that you start adding those kind of pieces if you have a solid year. It really, to me, turns on to this current football team, because if they, you know, win adequate amount of games, I do think they're going to land some of these guys, because some of these guys are wanting to see that.
I also think, and you know, we'll see what happens. Auburn, you know, isn't going to concede. I think LSU has kind of conceded, but Auburn's not going to concede here. But this is a battle that if Tennessee does win, it's the first big battle, to me, in my opinion, of this class, that they've literally rubbed elbows with two of the bigger schools in the SEC and may come out on top. Keyshawn, bigger commitment because of the dominoes of what he meant for the rest of the class. Cooper Mays was a big deal. But they weren't beating out a bunch of dudes for those guys. This would be different. This would be like they had to get into a knockout fight with some SEC schools, and if they win, that's the kind of thing that could set the stage for, can you beat out Alabama for Eric Gilbert? Can you beat out LSU or Maryland for Rakim Jarrett?
And then, of course, as we had in the war room, you know, Darnell Washington, who Tennessee, the people at Tennessee have long thought that they were in a really good spot with. Not that they're the leaders or anything, but that they are firmly planted in that one. You know,
it's going to be really interesting, though, that there are rumblings out there that Darnell and Gilbert don't want to play together.
I mean, who's in first?
Exactly.
You know, and it may urge, you know, it may urge one of them to want to get in first. If you're Tennessee, you just want one of them.
100%.
I mean, two would be just like hitting the lottery, but you just don't want to miss on both.
Washington visiting Tennessee last, if that holds true, schedule-wise. I mean,
yeah, because how many times have you said the phrase "shot your shot too early"?
Exactly.
And this would be the instance where they don't.
100%.
I mean, that would be a big deal. You know, that would, to get him on campus last. Not saying that means you get him, but that would be your best opportunity. You've positioned yourself the best you can position yourself to try to close.
And Tennessee's positioned themselves great with Jay Hardy, Tyler Barron. Obviously, you know, Trayvon Ripka is, I mean, he's kind of like last year's Darnell. Now, granted, most people, because you followed the visits, everybody kind of knew Tennessee was going to get Darnell, but he never talked. You know, same thing with Ripka never really talks. I mean, it's very rare. He doesn't do a whole lot of interviews. And he's sure not giving away anything, because Kentucky knows nothing. They feel great about where they're at. They just don't know for sure. Tennessee feels solid about where they're at, but they don't know for sure.
He hadn't told anybody, like you said in the war room.
Yeah, I mean,
neither staff has been given the upper
positioned well
down.
with a guy like O because of some of these other kids in this state. You're positioned well with Bryson Eason. You're positioned well with Mordecai McDaniel heading into his announcement next week. As of now, I would say Tennessee's the favorite there.
Kudos to the track program.
Yes, correct.
It's interesting because Tennessee, and it wasn't.
And the track programs also had a big deal with Lenneth Whitehead.
Right, and it, you know, all the signs pointed to Penn State because of distance and everything else, but Tennessee felt like the track part of the visit when Mordecai was here was a big deal. They felt like the track program really put its best foot forward in selling being a two-sport deal, and it sounds like that's had a lasting impact and a lasting weight on that guy, on Mordecai's, you know, decision-making process.
Yeah, I mean, despite the crystal balls or whatever, I mean, that's why so many people feel that he's going to end up in the SEC, whether it's Tennessee or Florida, because both of those programs, you know, with Mouse at Florida, and obviously Tennessee has a storied track program, and they got two of the fastest guys in the world right now. coming out of here. I mean, it makes sense why he would be why Mordecai would be attractive to those two types of programs.
Yeah, will be certainly one to watch in the coming days as well. As we wrap it up, my last thing, I want to jump back to BJ just a second. If it is Tennessee, what kind of player is this? I mean, I know
A guy they don't got.
I know it's getting the pipeline in. I know it's helping with Gilbert, and I know it's North Georgia. But specifically for a player, why was this guy such a priority for Tennessee?
Well, I think he's, we have seen BJ several times covering him over the years, and I think this summer he has improved because he's not just a speed guy anymore.
He's gotten physically bigger.
He is, but he's gotten physically bigger. But like he's actually even a little bit smaller than a guy like Reggie Grimes right now. Now he has the ability to get up to that 245, 250 spot, but he's not there yet. But he already plays with more power. He plays with more counter. He has more counter moves, and so the fact that he's not just a one-trick pony, and the fact that a guy like Chad Simmons, who's seen him even more, would tell you, BJ has a lot of upside because he's playing both ways for Marietta. He's been playing right tackle for 3.5 years at 225 pounds. So it's not like he gets to just gear up every play to just play defense. It's the same thing Tate Ratledge is doing. Ratledge is playing both ways over there. So it's hard to kind of evaluate all their high school film all the time, because they're having to play every single snap. I think when he gets to concentrate on one position, play that jack role, he has a similar skill set to a guy like Darrell Taylor. I mean, he as AP said, they don't have a lot of guys like him. Crouch is a bigger guy, but he's not as long. He doesn't have quite the bend, that BJ has. So he would be a big-time prospect. I think BJ's taken his game to another level this summer.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Austin Price and Jesse Simonton, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, everybody.